We're studying the book of First Thessalonians, and we're now in chapter 2 of this amazing book. And I want to show you what these verses in First Thessalonians chapter 2 are all about. These verses are about the do's and the don'ts of how to deliver the gospel message. And we find 7 things you should avoid when you share the gospel and 7 things you should do when you share the gospel. And this text is so important because in your life, if you're a Christian, your mission in life is to deliver the gospel message. That's why God has you here on earth, to bring Him glory through reaching the lost. And so this passage is a really helpful example to us. Let's remember where we've been. In chapter 1, the Apostle Paul wrote to the church in Thessalonica, and he said that they were a really good example of how to receive the gospel. And he gives all these reasons, like 5 reasons of why he's so thankful for them. It's because how they received the gospel so well, they're setting an example for all the churches. When you come to chapter 2, here's what's going on. Paul is recollecting how he acted when he came to Thessalonica, and he's telling us what he did and what he didn't do. And that example is so powerful because it teaches us how we are to deliver the gospel ourselves. And so that's where we're going. Let's look first at the don'ts. Paul reflects on how he acted among the Thessalonians, and he said, when I came to you, I didn't come this way. Now, you may wonder, why did Paul have to defend his ministry at all? If he was really doing well, why did he have to defend his ministry at all? Well, perhaps it's because when Paul came, there was this revival, right? Many people come to faith in Christ, but he kind of has to leave town right away for safety. And so I think Paul might be saying, look, I preached the gospel and then left, but that doesn't mean that I had bad intentions. It doesn't look great when somebody comes, preaches, and then runs. But Paul had a reason. And he says, I didn't come to you this way, I did come to you that way. We find 7 things that Paul did not do. It's like, don't deliver the gospel this way. Let's look at each one. We're going to start in verse 3. We'll come back to verses 1 and 2. Here's the first thing Paul did not do as he shared the gospel. For our appeal does not spring from, number 1, error. Number 1, Paul didn't preach the gospel that was in error. In other words, he's saying, I did not come to you with a false gospel. I came to you with the truth. Some people do preach a false gospel. They do go around peddling lies. But listen, Paul is saying the resurrection of Jesus is not an error. That is not a lie. I didn't come to you with error. Number two, I didn't come to you with impurity. Some people preach with impure motives, seeking to gain something in a wicked way. That's not Paul. He's saying, I didn't come to you with impurity. Number 3, I didn't come to you with any attempt to deceive. Paul's saying, I wasn't trying to trick you. It's not like he's a snake oil salesman who comes to town and then sells all his goods and then runs to the next town before he's caught. Paul's like, that wasn't me. I didn't come to you guys with any attempt to deceive. That's the third way that Paul did not bring the gospel. Next is this, number 4. Paul did not come to please man. Listen to what he says in verse 4. But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak. Not to please man, but to please God who tests our hearts. So that's the 4th way. Paul didn't come just as a people pleaser. He didn't come tweaking the message of the gospel or changing the truth so that was more palatable somehow. He didn't come trying just to please people. He came to please God. There's another kind of like the do's and don'ts of how to deliver the gospel message. Here's another don't. Paul said, I didn't do this, for we never came with words of flattery. To flatter someone is to puff someone else up so that you could gain some kind of a benefit from them. Paul's saying, I didn't do that. I didn't come trying to flatter everybody up. That's not how I delivered the gospel. 6th out of 7, nor with a pretext for greed. God is witness. Paul is saying, look, God is my witness. I did not come for greedy motives. One more thing we learn here in verse 6, the 7th way to not deliver the gospel, nor did we seek glory from people, whether from you or from others, though we could have made demands as an apostle of Christ. Some people do seek to deliver the gospel with this intention. Their hope is that they would get the glory, that people would look at them and say, wow, what a great guy that is, what a great woman that is. There are some people that really what they want in life is to gain a crowd. They seek glory from people. And Paul's saying, look, when I came to you with the gospel message, when I came to you preaching, I did not come like this. Now that's really helpful for us because as Christians, we want to spread the gospel. We want to deliver the gospel. And it's helpful for us to look at this and say, that's the wrong way. That's not how a messenger of Jesus Christ delivers the gospel. But then what we see over here, so that's kind of like the don't deliver the gospel that way. But over here, we find how Paul did deliver the gospel. And that sets a really good example for us. So let's look at these. Here are 7 ways Paul did deliver the gospel. Number 1, he came with gentleness. He came with gentleness. But we were gentle among you, like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. The truth is offensive. And when you speak what's true, that will offend many. But Paul didn't come getting a thrill out of offending other people. Paul came to these pagans, and listen, they were pagans. Some of them were Jews. Many of them were just Gentiles. These people were not in God's family. And how did he come to them? Well, he came gentle to them. You can speak the truth in a way that's gentle. Paul said this, he came like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. What an image of gentleness that is. In verse 8, I think we see 2 ways in which Paul came that set a good example. Number 2, he loved the people. He loved the people. Look at this, being affectionately desirous of you, and then you had become very dear to us. That's the second way here. Paul came to them, he cared about the people. If you come in as a missionary somewhere, or if you share the gospel with your neighbor and you don't really care about that person, that's not going to go so well. You need to come with a real concern and care for the other person. That's the second right way to deliver the gospel. A third way that Paul came is this. He came sacrificially. We were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves. Paul was ready to lay down his life for the Christians in Thessalonica. So he was gentle. He came caring about the people. He came willing to sacrifice for them. Next, 4th, Paul came working hard. He came as a hard worker. Watch this. For you remember, brothers, our labor and toil. He says this, we worked night and day. Paul came, what's the right way to deliver the gospel message? With hard work. He wasn't lazy. And also, he didn't put the burden on the people that he was speaking to. As a missionary, he came and he was burning the midnight oil so that the burden of sustaining his ministry wasn't on the people in Thessalonica. He didn't want to be a burden to any of them while he was proclaiming the gospel of God. So, what's the right way to deliver the gospel? Hard work. 5th is this. Paul came with integrity. He came with integrity. Look at this, verse 10. For you are witnesses, and God also, how holy and righteous and blameless was our conduct towards you, believers. If you want to deliver the gospel the right way, you need to be a man or woman of integrity. If you're compromising, if you're sinning behind the scenes, that undermines you delivering the message of the gospel. And so how did he do this? What's the right way to deliver the gospel message? With integrity, holy and righteous and blameless. Then Paul says this in verse 11. The sixth right way to deliver the gospel. Paul came passionately. Watch this. He exhorted and encouraged and charged. He came and he's charging them, saying, listen, you need to walk in a manner worthy of God. He says this, he came to them like a father with his own children. Now, did you notice this? Up here in verse 7, Paul said he came first like a nursing mother, and then down here, he says he came like a father. So he came like father and mother to these people. That's the right way to share the gospel, with gentleness, but with passion, and exhorting the people to walk in a worthy manner. All right, now one more way. We skipped verses 1 and 2, but let's go back to it now. Here's the seventh lesson we learn on how, what's the right way to deliver the gospel message. First, verse number 1, he says this, "For you yourselves know, brothers, that our coming to you was not in vain. But though we had already suffered and been shamefully treated at Philippi, as you know, we had boldness," and that's the word, boldness in our God to declare to you the gospel of God in the midst of much conflict. So what's the right way to deliver the gospel message? With courage, with boldness. Back at Philippi, they had been arrested and beaten. They suffered and they were treated shamefully. There was much conflict, and yet, what's the right way to deliver the gospel message? You deliver it with boldness and courage, even though there may be opposition. And so this is really a beautiful passage here in my mind. In chapter 1, what do we have? Here's the right way to receive the gospel. Then in chapter 2, here's the right way to deliver the gospel. Don't do it like this. Don't do it out of selfish motives, but do it out of a selfless desire to point others to Christ. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you again next time.